The main dining room is one of the most important parts of any cruise ship. After all, this is probably where you'll spend most of your meal times, with breakfast, lunch and dinner all being served here. Whilst the concept of having a meal in a cruise ship main dining room is simple, there are some things you really should know about that will make your whole experience so much better. In this video, I'm going to share with you 15 of my top tips for cruise ship dining rooms, which will hopefully help you to get the most out of the dining experience on your future cruises. If you enjoy this video today, then it would be great if you would consider supporting my channel by clicking both the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons. Now let's get started with number 1, and that is that cruise ship main dining rooms are totally included in your cruise fare. That's right, to enjoy a meal in a cruise ship main dining room, you won't be required to pay anything extra. On most cruise ships, there are 2 different types of dining venues. First, you've got the included or the complimentary dining venues, and second, you've got the speciality or the upcharge venues. Speciality restaurants will usually have a very specific menu and theme attached to them. For example, an Italian restaurant, an Indian restaurant, or maybe something like a steakhouse. The main dining room, on the other hand, will usually feature food from around the world, and the menu should change daily. The main dining room on board cruise ships is often far more grand than what you'll see from speciality restaurants. Some main dining rooms on cruise ships look so impressive, and they actually seem much more grand than their speciality counterparts. You might be looking at some of these venues and thinking, wow, they look as though they would be expensive if you were to dine in them on land. But that's where cruises can be absolutely great, because to dine in any cruise ship main dining room isn't going to cost you a penny or a cent extra. Number 2, most cruise ships operate with specific dining times. These are sometimes assigned at the point of making your booking or at some point before you board the ship. Now, I can't give any blanket advice on this topic because every cruise line is different, and in some cases, different cruise ships within the same cruise line brand can also differ. Generally speaking, if you're cruising on a ship that does feature set dining times, there will be an early seating and a late seating. There's sometimes even a third, but I find that to be more the case on European ocean cruises. If you're on the majority of ships that feature 2 sittings for dinner, you'll find the early will go in around 6 p.m. and the late will go in around 8 p.m. This is where it's very important that you think about dining at the point of booking your cruise, because if it doesn't matter to you, then that's okay. You don't have to spend anything extra to choose a dining time. Personally, I would never eat dinner while on vacation at 6 p.m. It's just simply far too early, because above all else, I would much rather be out on the open decks watching the ship sailing out of port rather than at a dining room table. I totally appreciate that some people would rather the opposite and they would rather have dinner early, and that's why the system for me really works. I'll always prefer to book a later dining slot rather than going in at 6 o'clock. My general advice is that if you're not sure if your cruise ship has multiple dining options, check your booking, give your cruise line a call, or if you get onto the ship and you're unhappy with what you've been allocated, or if it's unsuitable, go and speak to the maitre d' at the earliest possible opportunity to try and move. With most cruise lines, they will be able to accommodate small moves to dining times, for example, moving you from the early sitting to the late sitting, but some cruise lines will apply a surcharge to that because at the end of the day, it would have cost you extra to choose a dining time at the point of making your booking with those lines. Now, not every cruise line does operate with fixed dining times. If you look at cruising with cruise lines like Virgin Voyages or Norwegian Cruise Line, they are far more flexible and they operate much more like a restaurant on land would, where you either make a dining reservation with Virgin Voyages and you then turn up at that time, or with Norwegian Cruise Line, you just turn up when you're hungry and you'll be taken into one of the restaurants for dinner. So, as I say, I can't apply a blanket recommendation here, but always remember that cruise ship dining rooms will usually have set dining times, and think about what that means for you when you choose your cruise ship. Number 3, find out if your chosen cruise line or cruise ship operates with what's known as digital queuing systems, or if they favour another approach. Now, what is a digital queuing system? This did catch me off guard on a cruise that I took a few years ago, because my first few cruises were the fixed dining times that we spoke about earlier. I had never been on a cruise ship where you could join a digital queue for dinner. The specific example I would give you is that on the larger cruise ships from P&O Cruises, you're able to use the website to join a digital queue. That therefore means that you'll be notified on your phone or your electronic device, whatever you use, when your table's ready. So you'll know when to make your way to the dining room to hopefully head straight into your table. If your cruise ship operates with digital queuing systems, you may also turn up to the dining room to receive a buzzer that you'll then take to a lounge, take to a bar, and that buzzer will then vibrate or buzz when your table's ready. That means that rather than standing in a long physical line outside the dining room, like you do have to do with some cruise lines, you can relax somewhere with a drink and then head along when your table's ready. Now, you're not going to skip the line by knowing in advance if a digital queuing system exists, but what it will mean is that the process of actually getting a dinner table when you're ready to eat will just be so much simpler because you'll know what to expect. You can find out if your cruise line does have digital queues right here on YouTube. Just search for some travel vlogs of people who have been on your ships before, and even look for dining guides, and on there will be so much information to help. Number 4, it's usually possible to have your own table in a main dining room when you're cruising. I meet so many people who get completely put off from cruises because they hate the concept of going to dinner every night and sharing the table with 8, 10, or maybe even 12 people that they've never met before. Most cruise lines do allow sharing tables, and in fact they prefer that because it makes it easier to seat people. Or you can also request individual tables. If you do request an individual table, there's often a slightly longer wait than when you choose to share, just because if you go in as a table for 2, it's much quicker to process 6 couples onto a table for 12 than it is 6 couples onto individual tables. But if you're currently looking at taking a cruise and you are terrified of the thought of walking into a dining room every single night and sharing a table, then fear not, because most cruise lines will allow you to either share or have your own table in there. Personally, I can see benefits to both. I've had experiences in the past where I've met some amazing people on shared dinner tables. I've also unfortunately had experiences where I've been really looking forward to the end of the meal, to be honest, to make my own way out around the ship, either on my own or with the people I've travelled with. On that note, that brings us very nicely onto tip number 5, and that is that if you're unhappy with your table, speak to your maitre d' at the earliest possible opportunity, and chances are they'll be able to facilitate a move. You could request a move for a whole number of different reasons. Maybe the company at your table isn't quite what you would like, or maybe you just don't get on with the people at your table. Maybe the view or the position of your seat isn't ideal because maybe the glare coming through the windows is a bit much. If you speak to your maitre d', they can usually help to facilitate a move to make your dining experience so much better. I hear from so many people who come back from their cruise and they say, "Oh, I really enjoyed it, but we hated sharing a table at dinner." And when I ask them, "Well, did you ask to move?" they say, "Well, no, I didn't know that I could do that." Just speak to the maitre d'. With some cruise lines, okay, it might be difficult to move, but generally speaking, anytime I've asked for it in the past, it has happened. Now, what I would say here is that you want to be speaking to the maitre d' during a less stressful period. For example, don't turn up to the dining room for meal number 2 with a concern about meal number 1 and ask for an immediate move, because that maitre d' is currently trying to manage the meals of hundreds or sometimes thousands of passengers. What they don't really need is a problem presented to them at that point. Instead, why not approach them at the end of the meal when things are much more relaxed, or maybe speak to them the following day during the lunch service when that usually will be far more chilled for them in comparison to the main dinner service. So yes, if anything isn't to your liking at your table, why not request a move? Number 6, and this one is so important and it's a real pet hate of mine. If you're cruising on a ship with an assigned dining time, get there on time and don't be late. Now I know, things do happen during the day that can mean you end up turning up to dinner late. But if you're on a ship with 2 or 3 dining slots, it's really important that you turn up on time for a number of different reasons. If you're dining in the first slot, for example, or a dining slot that's got another after it, people have to turn up on time to allow them the adequate time to progress through the courses, to then allow the whole dining room to clear out, to have the tables reset for the next dinner service to come in. If you're on the latest dining option, then it's also really important you get there on time because, if nothing else, the crew, once they're finished serving dinner, they get to set up for breakfast and then retreat downstairs to get some well-earned rest. I am sure that your crew would be eternally grateful if you didn't turn up late, because that, at the end of the day, delays their departure at the end of the night. Service in a main dining room on board any cruise ship is just more efficient if all of the guests progress through their courses together at roughly the same time. We're not going to talk about this one anymore because I'm not going to rant about it, but at the end of the day, it's only fair. If you've got a dining slot on your cruise, try your hardest to get there on time, and that will really help the crew out. Number 7, if you've got any food allergies or food intolerances, let the crew know as early in the cruise as you possibly can. With most cruise lines, at the point of you making your booking, you'll be asked if any of the passengers have got any dietary requirements. It's really important that you, if asked, list them out at that stage, because then the cruise line can allocate particular codes to your booking, for example, that will flag you up when you get on board as someone they want to speak to double check the allergy or double check the intolerance. I am constantly really impressed with how cruise lines manage this, and I recently took a cruise with a line who would invite everyone with a specific dietary requirement to a meeting with the maitre d' and the head chef. In that meeting, you were then able to explain that you're a vegetarian or a vegan, or you've got a dairy intolerance, or you've got an allergy to peanuts. You could explain everything there to pretty much the top of the tree who are responsible in your restaurant. That would not only reassure me as a passenger if I had an intolerance, but it also reassures those members of staff that they can then make sure everyone's looked after. Other things might happen, like your food could be prepared in a different zone. Cruise ships generally are very, very good with handling allergies or intolerances, because at the end of the day, customer safety or passenger safety is always paramount. And yes, okay, that absolutely comes down to the physical ship and everything on that topic, but that also comes down to making sure everyone's safe throughout every dining experience that they have on board. So yes, number 7, if you've got any allergies or food intolerances, let the crew know as soon as you can. Number 8, my 8th top tip on the subject of cruise ship main dining rooms is to give something a try that you might not at home. At home, I can be quite a safe eater, shall we say, where I know what I like to eat. Sometimes I even know what I like to eat on certain nights of the week. I can be a little bit ridiculous when it comes to my routine. However, on cruise ships, I've learned that it's really quite important to me, and it's a real luxury for me to try tasting things that I wouldn't try at home. This has allowed me to discover dishes that I now absolutely love, that I probably wouldn't have, pardon the pun, pushed the boat out on if I were to go to a restaurant here at home. An example I would give you is that for years and years and years, I wondered what lobster might taste like, but I would never pay for that in a restaurant on land because it's usually one of the most expensive options, and what would I do if I didn't like it? It would feel like such a waste. On a cruise that I took a few years ago, lobster was one of the included or complimentary options during formal night in the main dining room. I gave it a go and I absolutely loved it. So now at home, I would be more inclined to try something like that rather than sticking to my relatively safe chicken tenders and chips, for example. So yes, try something different when you're on your next cruise in the dining room. Absolute worst case scenario, you don't like it. You can speak to a member of the crew and usually you can just substitute that for another meal. Now, yes, obviously watch from a food waste point of view when you exercise this, but in my experience, anything that I've tried, I've then really surprised myself and I've really enjoyed it. So why not try something new on your next trip? Number 9. If for whatever reason you need quicker service in the main dining room on a particular night, just let your waiting staff know and they will usually move heaven and earth to accommodate your request. Generally speaking, I find it takes about 2 hours max to progress through a full meal in a cruise ship main dining room. That usually allows you to get through 3 or 4 courses and you're then out on time to go to the main event that's taking place after dinner. Every cruise ship that I've ever been on operates with dining times that then match up with show times. I love doing dinner and a show when I cruise, and in fact, I will tend to do that pretty much every single night that I'm on board. If, however, there's another event that comes into the diary, for example, there might be an event in a bar, or there might be a showcase that you'd like to go to in one of the lounges, or maybe your favourite musician is playing somewhere and they're playing a little earlier than usual, just let your dining team know. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be able to get you on your way much quicker than what you usually would. So yeah, set a realistic expectation of maybe 90 minutes to 2 hours to progress through your meal, but if you need it to happen any quicker, just speak to the team and they will try so hard to help you out. Number 10, and this one might sound a little bit ridiculous, but my 10th top tip on the subject of cruise ship main dining rooms is that it is very important that you remember that your next snack or your next meal is never too far away when you're on a cruise. I have seen people in the past in a main dining room really loading up. They will have multiple starters, multiple desserts, a main course, and sometimes, yes, they might even request another main course. However, those people maybe don't think about the fact that there's then a buffet that will be open later in the evening. You will never be hungry on a cruise. I don't think I have ever felt the sensation of hunger on a cruise because there is always food available in most cases all around the clock. In a main dining room on a cruise ship, you don't have to load up every single plate and leave there totally stuffed, because if you do later in the evening want a snack, there's always somewhere to go. So yes, number 10, even if the portions are small, don't worry, because there's always another snack or another meal just around the corner. Number 11, and this one is so close to my heart. If you're travelling solo, rather than sitting on a huge shared table with other couples, or always sitting at a table for one, why not ask if there's a solo traveller's table in the dining room? This is a totally acceptable and actually really common question to ask a maitre d' when you arrive for dinner. I've cruised with some cruise lines that don't advertise publicly a solo traveller table, but when you go in, the maitre d' will know that people sitting over there, for example, at that table, they are all travelling on their own, so they would probably be totally fine with you joining them at the table. You might also find that some cruise lines have this, but they just don't put it in the daily schedule. So I personally quite enjoy, yes, okay, having dinner on my own sometimes, but I also really enjoy conversation at the dinner table if I'm travelling solo. I do enjoy conversing with other couples or families, but I always think there's something really special about meeting other solo cruisers because they get exactly how you feel and they understand the nerves that you might be experiencing walking into that dining room. So yes, it's always worth the ask. If you're cruising solo, why not ask if there's a solo traveller table and go and make some new friends? Number 12, if you've got any special requests, speak to the maitre d' as early in the cruise as you can to hopefully make them happen. Special requests can be a whole range of different things. For example, maybe you've got a birthday, an anniversary, or some other type of celebration that you'd like to mark while on board. Maybe it's something as simple as you've previously cruised on that ship and you loved table 112 the last time you were on board, and you'd love to make more memories at that dining table. In my experience with any special events or special requests, the maitre d's on cruise ships will work incredibly hard to make sure that you leave that ship with a massive smile on your face. So all you have to do is go down and ask the question. Going back to my earlier point, don't ask at the peak busy periods as everyone's coming in for dinner. Just pop down when the restaurant's a little bit quieter and just have a quiet word in their ear, and hopefully you're going to leave happy. Number 13, check dinner menus before you go in to have your meal. If you're anything like me, you'll enjoy knowing what's going to be served on the menu in the main dining room before you sit down. That way, if you don't like the menu, you can go and eat elsewhere. Or if you do like the menu, you can look forward to your dinner. This one is so important to me because there are some nationalities of food that if I know that is going to be served, I won't eat as much at lunch because I'll want to really look forward to having dinner. The example I would give is that I absolutely adore an Indian curry, and if I know that an Indian curry is going to be served as part of the evening meal service, I might even skip lunch so that I can enjoy it as much as I can when it comes to dinner. You can view the menu by usually just asking your waiter if you can see tomorrow night's dinner menu when you go in on the night before, or most cruise ships will have digital screens or just menus printed outside the dining room that allow you to go along the day of that meal to see what the nighttime options look like. I am such a huge advocate of checking dinner menus before you go in, because what you don't want is to sit down and realise that there's nothing that you really want to have and that you wish you had just dressed more relaxed and went to the buffet. So yes, check dinner menus before you go and sit down. Number 14, we're almost there. If you enjoy eating in the main dining room, which I completely appreciate, some people don't, but if you do, then remember that it's not just dinner that you can have in here. Most cruise lines will open the main dining rooms on board for a full sit-down breakfast service, and lots out there will also open that venue for lunch. Lunch is often overlooked, with people relaxing by the swimming pool, assuming that the main food option on board is the buffet. However, there are so many cruise ships out there that offer a full service sit-down lunch. You can find that a lot of cruise ships will only operate a main dining room lunch service during a sea day, but there are also so many who will offer that while the ship's in port. If you're in any doubt, then as I mentioned earlier, why not search on YouTube for things like dining guides, or just check your daily schedule when you get on board. I actually have one of these here from a cruise that I took with Norwegian Cruise Line, and on the back page, you've got all of your dining options with all of the times that they're all open, along with all of the other venues. That's exactly where you can find out if it's open for breakfast, lunch, or dinner on your cruise ship. Number 15, my final top tip in this list for you today is that if something isn't right during any aspect of your main dining room experience, speak to a member of the crew, ideally the maitre d', and they will work so hard to fix it for you. There's a bit of a recurring theme here with a number of these tips and recommendations, and that is that the crew in the dining rooms are absolutely fantastic on every single cruise ship that I've ever travelled on. If anything is a little untoward, or something doesn't feel right, or something isn't as comfortable as I'd like it to be, I just speak to the maitre d' in the restaurant, and they will always make sure that I leave happy and that that problem is solved. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed this video today. that is my top 15 tips for dining in a cruise ship main dining room. If you have enjoyed this video, then it would be great, as I mentioned earlier, if you could give this video both a thumbs up and also click subscribe to come along with me on so many more trips going forward. If you'd like to keep up to date with everything that's coming here at Fraser at Sea, then why not come and join my totally free email update list. You can find a link to pop your email in down in the description of this video and also down in the comment section of this video. I will then drop into your inbox each week with some great cruise deals that I spot and also an update on everything that's new across all of my social platforms. But if you'd like to come with me on another video, then why not come and join me over here? This has taken us all the way back to tip number 1 from this list, and it's looking at all of the things that are included on cruise ships. Here I share with you 15 things that are totally included in your cruise fare, and some of them might just surprise you. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.